The siren wasn't even on. The cruiser rolled to the curb like a shark gliding through shallow water, quiet and certain, blue and white paint glinting under the afternoon sun. It stopped at the corner of Maple and 3rd, where a small Saturday market spilled across the sidewalk with lemonade stands, a brass quartet of middle schoolers, and a chalk mural that read "Community" in blocky pastel letters. Zoe Carter, 14, clutched the strap of her cello case and waited for the crosswalk light to change. Her hair was pulled into a neat puff, her hoodie spattered with tiny chalk fingerprints from helping the little kids with the mural after her ensemble's set. She had one earbud in, playing a recording of Bach she was trying to memorize. She didn't see the police cruiser at first. She did see the dog. It was a big tan Malinois, muscled and humming with that wound-tight energy working dogs have. The dog sat in the back seat of the cruiser, ears pricked, eyes locked through the open rear window on the motion of the crowd, on Zoe. The officer stepped out. He was mid-40s, jaw tight, sunglasses reflecting the market like two black mirrors. His nameplate said, P. Hanley. He scanned the street as if it were a crime scene. "Hey, you!" he barked, pointing, not at any of the rowdy teenagers near the skate shop, not at the two men arguing by the hot dog cart, at Zoe. "Come here!" Zoe's hand tightened around the cello handle. She thumbed out her single earbud. "Me? You." He hooked a thumb toward his vest cam without looking at it. "You match a description. Backpack, hoodie." Half the kids on the block wore backpacks and hoodies. Zoe swallowed. "I'm coming from the youth symphony. My ensemble just played. I can show you my—" "Show me your hands." His voice sharpened, riding the dog's low growl from the back seat. "Both of them." Zoe lifted her hands, palms open, the cello case swinging against her shin. People slowed. Phones angled. Somewhere behind her, Ms. Delgado from the Arts Council said, "Officer, what's this about? She's one of our musicians." Hanley ignored her. He tipped his head toward the cruiser. The Malinois' hackles rose. Zoe kept her voice calm the way her dad taught her when she first started going places on her own. Clear, low, steady. "Sir, my ID is in my front pocket. I'm going to reach—" "Don't move," he snapped. "Set that case down, now." "It's my cello," Zoe said softly. Her hands trembled. She lowered the case gently to the sidewalk, the rubber feet clicking on concrete. "Ow!" A little boy behind her yelped as his mother yanked him back, startled by the officer's shout. The quartet of middle schoolers stuttered to silence mid-note. The brass went flat in the air. Hanley glanced at the crowd and squared his shoulders. "Step away from the case. I don't want it to—" Zoe's voice trailed off as the dog gave another growl, higher now, impatient. "Now!" She took 2 steps back. "Closer," he said to himself, reaching for the rear door handle. He cracked it an inch. The dog stood, the collar chain ringing like a tiny bell. It wasn't a sound anyone should fear, but they did. "Officer," Ms. Delgado tried again, her hands up in a plea. "You're scaring her. If you think she stole something, we can—" "She matches a suspect," Hanley said. "Everyone back." Zoe's heartbeat roared in her ears. Her throat felt tight. Her dad's lessons threaded through the panic. Say your name. State your intentions. Narrate your motions. She drew one breath that shook and said, "My name is Zoe Carter. I'm 14. I'm not resisting. My student ID is in my front hoodie pocket. May I reach for it?" "Negative." Hanley's jaw twitched. He opened the door another inch. The dog crowded the gap, breath hot and fast, eyes bright with work. "You don't move unless I tell you." The phones lifted higher. A woman near the hot dog cart said, "This is a child." A man muttered, "He's doing too much." Somewhere the market manager was calling someone. Security? The precinct? Voice low and urgent. Zoe's gaze drifted to her cello. She imagined the bow catching on strings, the first measure of the saraband she'd worked on for weeks. Her fingers itched for the shape of the notes like muscle memory could protect her. She blinked hard and focused on the officer's hands. One hand on the door, one hand drifting toward the leash clipped to a ring just inside. Just a training pop to move a suspect, he told himself, an obedience check. Except there was no crime and no suspect, just a girl with a cello in a hoodie that could belong to anyone. "Hands on your head," he ordered. Zoe obeyed. Her shoulders shook. Somewhere to her left, Ms. Delgado said, "Zoe, it's okay, we're right here." That helped, but only a little. The officer glanced toward the street like he was waiting for backup. No siren, no partner, Just the dog, the crowd, and the heat of his own certainty. "Officer Hanley!" A voice sliced clear across the market like a conductor's baton cutting a messy orchestra. Not loud, just precise. Everyone turned to see a man moving through the crowd with unhurried steps that somehow parted people like water. He wore a plain navy jacket over jeans, a dad on a Saturday, except every inch of him said professional. He didn't run. He didn't raise his hands. His eyes were on Zoe. "Dad," Zoe exhaled, the word breaking like a note that won't hold. Hanley stiffened. "Sir, step back." The man stopped 3 yards away, palms visible, gaze steady. "My name is Daniel Carter. That's my daughter. This ends right now." Hanley smiled without humor. "Then you can help her comply." Mr. Carter's lashes lowered 0.5 millimeter, the only sign of heat. "She has complied," he said, voice still even. "She identified herself and stated her intention to reach for ID. You escalated to a K9 on a minor without articulable probable cause." The words hung, crisp as glass. A few in the crowd traded looks. Someone whispered, "Articute what?" Hanley bristled. "Sir, step back or I'll—" "Call your supervisor," Mr. Carter said. He didn't look away from Zoe. "Now." "I don't have to—" Mr. Carter sighed, soft, almost disappointed, and slipped his wallet from an inside pocket in one slow, practiced motion. The badge flashed a dull gold before it settled in his open palm. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The seal caught a slice of sun. People gasped. The world seemed to tilt. Even the Malinois hesitated, reading the change in the air through the leash. Hanley's sunglasses suddenly felt too tight on his face. The badge wasn't loud, but it was final. Mr. Carter's voice dropped to a tone that didn't need volume. "You are detaining my minor daughter in public with a K9 based on a hoodie and a backpack. You will step away, leash your dog, and call your watch commander. Then you will review your body cam to confirm she did everything right, and you did not." Silence spread like ink. The brass kids stood frozen, horns at their sides. The market manager's phone call trailed off to nothing. Even the gulls circled quietly, as if afraid to cut the moment. Hanley's mouth opened, then shut. The leash suddenly felt like a live wire in his hand. He could feel the cameras on him, their tiny, unblinking eyes, his own body cam a square weight on his chest. He heard his training sergeant's voice from years ago, the lesson he usually shoved aside. Discretion is a tool, so is restraint. He closed the cruiser door with a careful click. The dog sat instantly, ears still sharp. Mr. Carter didn't look at Hanley when he spoke next. He looked at Zoe. "You okay, Zoe?" Zoe nodded once, a small, brave motion. She lowered her hands from her head, fingers still trembling, and reached for the cello handle like it was a rope back to herself. The crowd exhaled with her. "Hands visible," Hanley muttered. Reflex more than rule now, but the authority had gone thin. Mr. Carter's eyes flicked to him at last, calm, implacable. "Supervisor, now!" Hanley lifted his radio with a hand that pretended not to shake and keyed the mic. As the clipped request went out, the market found its breath again, quiet, wary, watching. And Zoe, with her father's steady presence beside her and 100 lenses catching every heartbeat of the scene, realized this day would not end at Maple and 3rd. It was only beginning. The radio on Hanley's shoulder crackled, his voice carrying thin as he requested a supervisor to Maple and 3rd. His words stumbled, the code numbers rushed. Around him, the market crowd had gone still, phones raised like a wall of glass, recording everything. Zoe's fingers clenched the handle of her cello case. The rubber feet scraped faintly against the concrete as she steadied it upright. Her shoulders still shook, but the simple act of reclaiming the instrument made her spine a little straighter. She exhaled and focused on her father's presence, the calm weight of his voice, the way his feet planted, unhurried but unmovable. Mr. Carter didn't lower his badge. He kept it visible in his open palm, angled just enough that both Hanley and the cameras saw the gold seal. "Step back from my daughter," he repeated, softer now, but with a finality that pressed like a hand on glass. Hanley shifted, tugging his sunglasses lower on his nose as if to shield the heat in his eyes. The Malinois let out one low growl before sitting again. The officer's fingers twitched near the leash clip but didn't move. "I followed procedure," Hanley said quickly, his voice carrying toward the crowd more than toward Carter. "Suspect matched the description." "What description?" Mr. Carter's words cut, sharp as a scalpel. State it for your camera. Hoodie? Backpack? You detained a 14-year-old girl on a public sidewalk with a K-9 unit and failed to articulate probable cause. Do you understand what that means? The officer's jaw flexed. He muttered, "She fit what dispatch said." "Then you'll state that clearly to your supervisor when he arrives." Mr. Carter's eyes didn't waver. Until then, leash secured, dog contained, hands visible. The market manager, emboldened by Carter's presence, stepped forward a half step. "Officer, the girl was helping with our music program. She performed right here. Half the town saw it." Phones bobbed as the crowd murmured in agreement. Someone shouted, "She's just a kid." Another, "We've got this on video." Zoe pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to sink back, to disappear. But her father's steady presence rooted her. She whispered, barely audible, "I'm okay." Mr. Carter's eyes softened as he glanced at her. "You did everything right, Zoe. Exactly what we talked about." The words threaded into her like warmth, knitting together the frayed edges of her fear. Sirens approached at last, louder now, unmissable. A second cruiser pulled up, then a third. Officers spilled onto the scene, and from the middle of them came a stout man with silver hair tucked under his cap, Lieutenant Garrison, the watch commander. "What's going on here?" he barked, taking in the tableau. The open phones, the tense dog, Hanley rigid by his cruiser, the man with the badge standing calmly beside a trembling girl. "Lieutenant," Hanley started, words tumbling out. "I had a possible suspect." Mr. Carter cut in smoothly, lifting his badge just slightly higher. "Daniel Carter, FBI. This officer escalated to a K-9 deployment on my minor daughter without articulable cause. I demand immediate de-escalation, a review of his body cam, and removal of my daughter's name from any field report." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every syllable. Lieutenant Garrison froze when he saw the badge. His eyes narrowed, then softened into something cautious, calculating. "Agent Carter, let's move this conversation aside." "No," Carter said firmly. "We'll have it right here, in the open. These people saw what happened. My daughter did everything right, and she was treated like a suspect because of the color of her skin and the shape of her hoodie. Transparency isn't optional." Applause broke out from the back of the crowd, hesitant at first, then swelling as more joined in. Phones angled higher. Hanley's face flushed crimson under his sunglasses. "Lieutenant, I was—" "Enough," Garrison snapped, raising a hand. "Holster the K-9, now!" With stiff motions, Hanley clipped the leash and shut the cruiser door. The Malinois' bark muffled as the window rolled up. The officer's jaw clenched like steel as he turned away, but the weight of the crowd pressed on his back like lead. Zoe inhaled deeply, the air finally cool in her lungs again. Her father rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You're safe now," he murmured. "Dad," she whispered, eyes glossy. "Everyone was watching." "They needed to," Carter said. His gaze swept the crowd. "This isn't just about you. It's about making sure the next child doesn't have to go through this." Lieutenant Garrison cleared his throat, his eyes shifting between Carter, Zoe, and the forest of phones. "Agent Carter, we'll open a formal review. Officer Hanley, you're relieved from the scene. Report to the precinct immediately." Hanley stiffened. "Sir, with respect, immediately." Garrison's tone was steel. As Hanley stalked to his cruiser, a man near the hot dog stand shouted, "We saw it all. That girl's a hero, not a suspect." Others echoed, voices rising into a chant of Zoe's name. Zoe blinked, stunned as people cheered for her, phones raised not in accusation but in solidarity. For the first time since the officer's voice cut through the music, she felt the tight band around her chest ease. Her father squeezed her shoulder again. "This isn't over, Zoe, but you handled yourself with grace. That matters." The lieutenant turned to them, voice lower. "Agent Carter, let's debrief at the precinct." Carter's jaw set. "We'll come, but she rides with me." Zoe nodded faintly, clutching her cello case. The weight of the market's cheers and the hum of the cameras followed her as she walked, her father's steady stride beside her. She didn't know what came next, but she knew this was only the beginning of a fight much bigger than one leash, one officer, one Saturday market. The ride to the precinct was quiet, except for the faint rattle of Zoe's cello case in the back seat. Mr. Carter drove his own SUV, knuckles tight on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. Zoe sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, watching the city blur past. Her voice finally broke the silence. "Dad, Was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Mr. Carter's eyes flicked to her, sharp and steady. No, Zoe. You did everything exactly right. This wasn't about you breaking rules. It was about him abusing his authority. Don't ever carry his mistake as your burden. Zoe nodded faintly, though her chest still felt tight. She reached into her hoodie pocket and touched the laminated student ID. She'd been seconds from pulling it out when the officer barked at her to freeze. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. When they arrived at the precinct, the building loomed gray and square, its flag whipping in the afternoon wind. Reporters had already gathered on the steps, cameras flashing as soon as they spotted them. Agent Carter, is it true an officer unleashed a dog on your daughter? Zoe, how did you feel in that moment? Do you plan to file charges against Officer Hanley? Mr. Carter shielded Zoe with his arm, guiding her firmly past the swarm. No comment. Respect her privacy. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and copier ink. Lieutenant Garrison waited just past security, face drawn, cap tucked under his arm. Agent Carter, he said stiffly, we've pulled Hanley's body cam footage. I'll show you both. Zoe's stomach flipped. The idea of watching herself stand frozen on that sidewalk made her want to bolt, but her father's steady hand on her shoulder kept her rooted. In the dim light of a small conference room, the footage played on a mounted monitor. Hanley's voice barked sharp and cold. The camera jolted as he opened the cruiser door. The Malinois surged forward, teeth bared, chain rattling. Zoe flinched at the sight of herself on the screen, small cello case at her feet, hands trembling on her head. She heard her own voice crack, "My name is Zoe Carter, I'm 14. Her father's jaw flexed, but his eyes stayed locked on the screen. He didn't blink. The video rolled on. Mr. Carter's calm arrival, the badge flashing, his voice cutting precise and unyielding. The room was silent when it ended, except for the faint hum of the projector. Lieutenant Garrison cleared his throat. The footage is clear. Hanley escalated without justification. Policy requires probable cause for a K-9 deployment, which he did not articulate. He'll be placed on immediate administrative leave while Internal Affairs investigates. Mr. Carter's voice was steady, but iron underneath. Leave isn't enough. He terrorized a child. That's misconduct, potentially criminal. Garrison's shoulders sagged. I understand, but these things take process. Zoe whispered. Everyone saw it, though. At the market. All those phones. Exactly, her father said. This won't vanish into a report. After the meeting, Zoe sat in the lobby, swinging her feet against the bench as her father signed paperwork with Garrison. A young officer approached quietly, no older than 25. You did good out there, he said softly. Zoe looked up. Good? I was scared. He nodded. That's normal. But you stayed calm. You followed directions. You spoke clearly. That takes courage. Zoe managed a small smile. Thanks. Before the officer could say more, Mr. Carter returned, signaling it was time to leave. Outside, the reporters surged again. This time, Mr. Carter stopped. He positioned himself squarely in front of the cameras, his hand resting protectively on Zoe's shoulder. My daughter was targeted without cause today, he said evenly. An officer escalated to the use of a K-9 against a 14-year-old child carrying a musical instrument. That is unacceptable. The body cam confirms it. Internal Affairs will investigate, and I expect full accountability. Agent Carter, do you think race played a factor? One reporter shouted. Mr. Carter didn't flinch. You've seen the video, you tell me. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Will you be pressing charges? Another asked. That's under review, Carter said. But make no mistake, this will not disappear quietly. With that, he guided Zoe into the SUV. The cameras followed until the doors closed, muffling the chaos outside. That night, Zoe curled on the couch at home, cello case propped in the corner. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. Her dad brought her hot chocolate, setting the mug carefully in her hands. You did nothing wrong, Zoe. Remember that. She nodded slowly, sipping the warm sweetness. Her voice was small. Will it happen again? Mr. Carter sank into the chair opposite her, eyes weary but fierce. Not if I can help it, and not if the truth does its job. For the first time since the market, Zoe let herself lean back and breathe. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The story was spreading, the footage circling. Tomorrow, the world would know her name, and not just as a musician. By Sunday morning, Zoe's world had changed. She woke to the buzz of her phone vibrating endlessly on the nightstand. At first, she thought it was Kayla sending memes like usual. But when she opened her messages, she froze. Dozens of unread texts, hundreds of notifications, videos, links. The body cam footage hadn't leaked yet, but the bystander videos had, and they were everywhere. One clip showed Hanley cracking open the cruiser door, the Malinois straining against the leash, Zoe's small voice narrating her ID. Another caught the exact second Mr. Carter stepped forward, badge flashing, voice like steel. "This ends right now." The hashtags were multiplying. Hashtag justice. For Zoe. Hashtag hands that save. Hash stop the dogs. Zoe stared at the screen, numb. She scrolled past thousands of comments. "She's just a kid. This is disgusting. That officer should be fired immediately. Agent Carter is a boss." The calm in his voice? Goosebumps. "Zoe, you're a hero." Her hands trembled. She tossed the phone aside, curling into her blanket. Downstairs, her father was already on the phone, his tone clipped. "No, she will not give a press statement. She's 14. Yes, I'll release a statement on her behalf. No further questions until Internal Affairs concludes their review." He hung up and rubbed his temples, the weight of his badge heavy even here, in his own kitchen. He looked up to find Zoe standing in the doorway, clutching her blanket. "They all know my name now," she whispered. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "They would have known eventually, but they'll know the truth too. That's what matters." At the precinct, the storm was hitting hard. Hanley sat in a back office, his jaw set as other officers avoided his gaze. His phone buzzed with angry voicemails, threats, demands. He played one back. "You think a hoodie makes a kid a criminal? You don't deserve that badge." He hurled the phone across the room, chest heaving. Lieutenant Garrison appeared in the doorway. "You're off duty until further notice. Hand over your firearm and badge." Hanley's face burned. "You're hanging me out to dry. What about Carter? He grandstands with a camera crew and I'm the villain? You escalated on a child with a K9, Garrison snapped. "There's no defending that." Hanley shoved the badge across the desk, his hand trembling with fury. "You'll regret this when the union backs me." Meanwhile, Zoe tried to go about her day like nothing had changed. She sat at the dining table with her math homework open, but the numbers blurred. Notifications kept buzzing, even when she silenced her phone. Kayla called, voice excited. "Zoe, you're trending. Even celebrities are sharing your video." Zoe pressed her forehead into her palm. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to go home from rehearsal." "You didn't ask for it," Kayla said softly, "but you showed everyone what bravery looks like. That matters." By Monday, reporters swarmed outside the Carters' house. Cameras flashed as Zoe and her father walked to the car. "Zoe, how did it feel when the dog lunged?" "Agent Carter, will you press federal charges?" "Do you think this reflects systemic bias in law enforcement?" Mr. Carter shielded Zoe with his arm, his voice calm but firm. "No questions today." Inside the SUV, Zoe whispered, "Dad, it's like they don't see me. Just the story." He squeezed her hand. "Then we'll remind them you're more than a headline." That afternoon, a clip of Zoe playing her cello circulated online, shared by one of her teachers. The video showed her on stage, eyes closed, bow sweeping gracefully across strings. Over it, someone had written, "This is the girl they treated like a suspect." The contrast hit hard. The clip racked up millions of views in hours. Comments poured in, "She's brilliant and brave. America doesn't deserve kids like Zoe. Protect her at all costs." Zoe watched it once, then shut her laptop. The idea that strangers were dissecting her music, her face, her fear, it was overwhelming. Across town, Hanley met with a union rep in a dim diner booth. The rep slid a folder across the table. "We'll fight this. Say you feared for officer safety. Say she reached for something." Hanley's hand tightened on the folder. He pictured Zoe's trembling hands, her small voice. "My name is Zoe Carter. I'm 14. For the first time, a flicker of doubt pierced his anger. He shoved the folder back. "She didn't reach. Everyone saw it." The rep frowned. "Then you're sunk." Hanley didn't answer. That night, Zoe curled on the couch with her cello resting across her knees. She plucked the strings softly, the notes barely audible over the murmur of the TV where pundits debated her story. Her father sat nearby, laptop open, typing a formal complaint to the precinct. He paused, watching her. You don't have to play tonight, Zoe. She shook her head. I want to. It makes me feel normal. The bow slid across strings, low and steady, filling the room with a melody that pushed back against the noise outside. For a few minutes, Zoe wasn't a headline, wasn't a hashtag. She was just a girl with her cello, finding herself again note by note. By Tuesday morning, Zoe's school felt like a spotlight. Students clustered in the hallways, whispering and pointing. Some looked at her with awe, others with curiosity, and a few with something sharper, envy or disbelief. When she walked into first period, the chatter hushed. Someone muttered, "That's her." Zoe slid into her seat, head low, wishing she could vanish into her math book. At lunch, Principal Ellis approached her table. His voice was gentle but firm. "Zoe, the school board has asked if you'd speak at tomorrow's assembly. It's about courage, community, and what happened Saturday. You don't have to say yes, but I think your voice could help a lot of students." Zoe's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Speak? In front of the whole school? Her stomach knotted. I don't know, she whispered. Think about it, Principal Ellis said, patting her shoulder. You've already shown more bravery than most adults ever will. That night, Zoe sat at her desk with her journal open. The compass her father gave her rested beside the page. She wrote slowly, I didn't ask for this, but maybe I can use it. If I can help, I must. Her father knocked gently on the door. They want you to speak? Zoe nodded. I'm scared. He crouched beside her chair, his eyes steady. Being scared doesn't mean you can't do it. It means you're human. And when you stand up anyway, that's when people listen. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll try. The next day, the gymnasium was packed. Students filled the bleachers, teachers lined the walls, and a local news crew set up cameras near the stage. The hum of voices was like a restless ocean. When Zoe stepped onto the stage, a hush fell. She clutched the microphone, her palms slick, her cello case propped beside her like an anchor. I'm Zoe Carter, she began, her voice trembling. You've probably seen the video. Yes, I was scared. I thought that dog was going to hurt me. I thought I did something wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. But I also remembered what my dad taught me. Say your name, say your intentions, stay calm. That's what I did. And I want every kid here to know, you matter. Even if someone laughs at you, or points at you, or treats you like you're less, you matter. The applause started small, then swelled until the gym thundered. Teachers clapped, students whistled. Some stood. Zoe swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I didn't want to be in the spotlight, but maybe if I tell my story, another kid won't have to feel that fear. Maybe that's worth it. After the assembly, students swarmed her. Some hugged her, some asked for selfies, but not everyone was supportive. In the hallway, Zoe overheard two boys sneering. She's just milking it for attention. Yeah, it's not like she saved the world. She just stood there. The words stung, sharp as broken glass. Zoe clenched her fists but kept walking. At her locker, Kayla squeezed her arm. Ignore them. Half the school's proud of you. Don't let the other half drag you down. Zoe nodded, though the ache lingered. Across town, Officer Hanley sat in his dim living room, blinds drawn. The news played on his TV, Zoe's assembly speech replaying on loop. She's just a kid, the anchor said, but already a national symbol of courage. Hanley muttered to himself, Symbol? She's a kid with a hoodie. He reached for the remote, but his hand froze. The screen showed Zoe clutching her cello case, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. You matter. For a flicker of a moment, guilt cut through his anger. He turned off the TV and sat in silence. That evening, Zoe returned home drained. She dropped her backpack by the door and sank onto the couch. Her father joined her, holding a folder. The school board sent me this. They want to start a CPR training program inspired by you. Imagine, hundreds of students learning how to save lives because of what you did. Zoe blinked. Me? He smiled. Yes, you. Sometimes the hardest stories lead to the biggest change. She leaned against him, the compass warm in her palm. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. But outside their home, the storm kept building. News outlets debated her story. Commentators praised her courage. Others questioned her father's role, spinning conspiracy theories about the FBI. and Hanley's union filed a formal grievance, claiming he had been unfairly targeted. The battle was no longer just about one officer and one girl. It was becoming a national flashpoint. Zoe didn't know it yet, but the world wasn't finished with her story. It was only pulling her deeper into the spotlight. By Thursday morning, Zoe's face was everywhere. Clips of her assembly speech ran on morning shows, her words stitched into viral TikToks. You matter. Even if someone laughs at you or points at you or treats you like you're less, you matter. National outlets picked it up, and the invitations poured in. One came from a primetime news program in New York, another from a late-night talk show. Even a daytime host famous for surprise giveaways wanted her on. Mr. Carter scanned the stack of emails with a frown. "You don't have to do all of this," he told her, voice calm but firm. "You're a kid first. You don't owe the world your time." Zoe bit her lip. "But what if I can help someone? What if a kid out there hears me and feels braver?" Her father studied her, seeing the determination in her eyes. Finally, he nodded. "One interview, the right one. After that, we set limits." 2 nights later, Zoe sat in a brightly lit studio, makeup brushed across her cheeks, mic clipped to her sweater. The host leaned forward, smiling warmly. "Zoe Carter, thank you for being here. You've become a national voice after such a frightening moment. Can you tell us what was going through your mind when that officer opened the car door?" Zoe's fingers tightened around the compass hidden in her pocket. She took a deep breath. "I was scared, really scared. But I remembered what my dad taught me. Say your name, stay calm, explain what you're doing. I thought if I followed the rules, I'd be safe." The host nodded, her eyes glistening. "And when you saw your father step in?" Zoe smiled faintly. "I knew I wasn't alone anymore." The studio audience erupted in applause. The clip would later spread across every social platform. The moment Zoe admitted her fear, but showed her strength anyway. Across town, Hanley sat in a dingy bar, the TV above the counter blaring the same interview. His knuckles whitened around his glass as the audience cheered for Zoe. "She's playing the victim," he muttered. A man on the next stool glanced at him. "That's a kid, man. She handled herself better than you did." Hanley turned away, shame simmering beneath his anger. The next morning, Zoe returned to school, bracing for the wave of attention. Students crowded around her locker. Some smiled, asking questions. A girl she barely knew pressed a folded note into her hand. "Thank you. I went through something like that once. Seeing you gave me hope." But not everyone was kind. On the bus ride home, Zoe overheard whispers. "She's milking it. Her dad's FBI. No wonder it blew up. Bet she's loving the fame." The words stung, but Zoe forced herself to stare out the window, gripping her compass like a lifeline. Meanwhile, Mr. Carter was summoned to a closed-door meeting at the bureau. His supervisor, Special Agent Morris, slid a folder across the table. Inside were news clippings, transcripts, and photos of Zoe at the assembly. "You've handled this well, Daniel," Morris said carefully, "but the bureau doesn't like one of its agents becoming part of the story. Be cautious. People are watching, and not just reporters." Mr. Carter nodded. "My first priority is my daughter's safety." "Good," Morris said. "Keep it that way. This case is bigger than one precinct now. Political eyes are on it. Don't let Zoe get caught in the crossfire." That evening, Zoe sat with her cello in the living room, bow resting lightly on the strings. The notes came slow at first, hesitant, then stronger. Her father listened from the kitchen, the music threading through the air like a balm against the noise of the world outside. When she finished, he set down his coffee and said, "You know, Zoe, you don't have to be anyone's hero but your own." She smiled faintly. "But maybe if I'm brave, someone else will feel brave too." He crossed the room and kissed the top of her head. "That's my girl." Online, the battle raged. Supporters flooded social media with hashtags and praise. Civil rights groups launched petitions demanding Officer Hanley's termination. But backlash brewed too. Anonymous accounts attacked Zoe's family, claiming the FBI staged the event for attention. By the weekend, the story wasn't just about Zoe anymore. It had become a national debate about race, policing, authority, and the courage of a 14-year-old girl who never asked to be in the spotlight. And deep down, Zoe knew the hardest part hadn't even begun. Saturday morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, but Zoe didn't stir. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand, vibrating like a trapped bee. Her mother finally stepped in, picked it up, and switched it off. "She needs a break," she whispered to Daniel Carter, who was sipping coffee at the kitchen counter. Daniel nodded, his eyes heavy. He had spent half the night drafting responses to reporters, lawyers, and community leaders. Each email felt like another brick pressing down on his shoulders. His training had taught him how to handle national security crises, but nothing had prepared him for seeing his daughter turned into one. By noon, Zoe finally shuffled into the kitchen, hair tousled, eyes tired. She poured cereal but didn't touch it. "Everything online feels so loud," she murmured. "Even when the house is quiet, I hear it." Her father leaned forward. "That's the weight of becoming a symbol, Zoe. It's not fair, but people are looking at you for strength." "I didn't choose this," she whispered. "I know, but you've handled it better than anyone could ask." He reached for her hand. "We'll set boundaries. No more interviews this week. You need time to breathe." Zoe nodded, relief flickering in her eyes. Outside their home, the story was growing louder. Protesters had gathered outside the precinct, holding signs that read, "Justice for Zoe" and "No more dogs on kids." Chants echoed down the block. Across town, counter-protesters waved flags and shouted back, claiming Hanley was just doing his job. News crews filmed the clashes, splicing images of Zoe's calm face beside footage of angry crowds. The country was splitting along familiar lines, and Zoe was at the center whether she liked it or not. Inside the precinct, Hanley sat across from his union lawyer. The lawyer tapped a pen against a legal pad. "Public opinion is against you. That video is damning, but the body cam will help, if we frame it right." Hanley scowled. "Frame it?" She looked suspicious. "Hoodie, backpack, I followed my instincts." The lawyer sighed. "Instinct won't hold up in court. You need to show you feared for public safety. You'll testify the case could have hidden a weapon, that the dog was a precaution." Hanley clenched his jaw. The words felt hollow even to him, but they were his only shield. "Fine, I'll say it." The lawyer leaned closer. "And you do not, under any circumstances, admit fault. The second you do, your badge is gone for good." Hanley nodded, though unease twisted in his gut. Meanwhile, Zoe's school tried to return to normal, but it was impossible. Teachers fielded calls from parents demanding extra security. Students whispered in hallways about the girl from the video. Some admired her, while others mocked her fame. During gym, Zoe overheard two girls near the bleachers. "She probably loves the attention," one said. "Yeah, bet she's already planning her book deal." Zoe's chest tightened. She wanted to shout, "I didn't ask for this," but instead she walked away, gripping her compass in her pocket until the ridges pressed into her palm. That evening, Daniel sat Zoe down at the dining table. Papers were spread before him, statements, petitions, official letters. "Zoe, civil rights groups are calling. They want you to join a press conference. It's your choice, but..." "No." Zoe's voice cracked, but her eyes were firm. "I need a break. I don't want to stand behind microphones anymore, not right now." Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then we'll say no. You've already given enough." Her shoulders sagged with relief, but the storm didn't stop outside their window. On Sunday morning, protesters marched past their street. Some carried signs with Zoe's name. Others shouted for Hanley's termination. News helicopters circled overhead, the thrum of their blades rattling the windows. Zoe sat on the couch, hugging her knees. "Dad, will it ever stop?" He joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Storms always pass, but sometimes they leave behind change." Across town, Hanley sat in his car, parked far from the precinct. His phone buzzed with messages from supporters who called him a hero, urging him not to back down. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zoe's trembling hands, her voice steady as she said her name. For the first time, the certainty he'd clung to began to crack. That night, Zoe opened her journal again. She wrote, "I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to be Zoe. But maybe being Zoe means both. Scared and brave, tired and strong. Maybe I can be all of it at once." She set down her pen, placed her compass on the page, and whispered her mantra, "If I can help, I must." Her father, watching quietly from the doorway, whispered his own, "If I can protect, I must." Two voices in one house, carrying the weight of a nation's gaze, bracing themselves for what was still to come. Monday morning began with an envelope slid under the Carters' front door. Zoe picked it up on her way to breakfast, frowning at the bold seal in the corner. United States Congress. She handed it to her father. "What is this?" Daniel Carter opened it carefully, scanning the crisp lettering inside. His brow furrowed, then lifted slightly. "Zoe, this is an invitation. They want you to come to Washington and speak at a youth leadership forum. Lawmakers will be there." Zoe's stomach dropped. Washington? Dad, I can't. I barely handled the assembly at school. You don't have to, Daniel said quickly. It's optional, but it means people are listening. Zoe stared at the compass on the table, tracing its edges with her fingertip. Listening. But what if her voice cracked? What if she froze? I'll think about it, she whispered. Meanwhile, at the precinct, Officer Hanley walked into a hearing room with his lawyer at his side. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A three-member disciplinary board sat behind a long table, files stacked high. Officer Hanley, the chair began, today we'll review the incident of March 12th, specifically your detainment of Zoe Carter and your decision to deploy a K-9 unit. Hanley's lawyer leaned forward. For the record, Officer Hanley feared the suspect might be armed. Her backpack could have concealed a weapon. The dog was a precaution. One board member raised an eyebrow. The suspect was a 14-year-old girl carrying a cello case. Hanley shifted uncomfortably. His throat was dry. He started to speak, then stopped. The truth stuck like a splinter in his chest. His lawyer kicked him under the table. Officer Hanley stands by his assessment in the moment, the lawyer said. The board members scribbled notes, their expressions unreadable. At school, Zoe's day was anything but normal. Teachers looked at her with sympathy, students with curiosity. During lunch, Kayla leaned across the table. You have to go to Washington, she whispered. Zoe frowned. Why? Because your voice matters. You're not just speaking for yourself anymore. You're speaking for every kid who feels powerless. Zoe stared at her tray. The idea of stepping into a room full of lawmakers made her chest tighten, but Kayla's words echoed. Maybe this wasn't just about her anymore. That evening, Zoe practiced her cello in the living room. Each note was clear, steady, a rhythm she could control. Her father listened quietly, sipping coffee. When she lowered her bow, he asked softly, What do you want, Zoe? Forget the cameras, forget the invitations. What do you want? She hesitated. I want to be safe. I want to play music. I want people to stop treating kids like suspects. Then say that, Daniel said gently. If you go to Washington, don't try to be what they expect. Just be Zoe. Across town, Hanley sat alone in his kitchen, replaying the board hearing in his mind. His lawyer's words had been smooth, but hollow. For the first time, he wondered if defending himself with half-truths was worse than admitting the whole. His phone buzzed. A message from his union chat lit the screen. Stay strong, don't apologize. The media's blowing it out of proportion. Hanley stared at the message, then set the phone down. His reflection in the window looked older than he remembered, lines etched deep from years of scowling. He whispered to himself, but what if they're right? The next morning, Zoe and her father walked past another cluster of reporters outside their home. Questions flew like arrows. Zoe, will you speak in Washington? Agent Carter, do you think this case will change national policing policy? Do you believe Officer Hanley should lose his badge? Daniel shielded his daughter, answering none. But once inside the SUV, Zoe turned to him. Dad, maybe I should go. Maybe it's bigger than me now. He studied her face, the determination beneath the fear. Slowly, he nodded. If that's what you want, I'll be by your side the whole time. That night, Zoe opened her journal. She wrote, I'm scared. But maybe courage isn't about being fearless. Maybe it's about being scared and speaking anyway. She placed the compass on the page and whispered her mantra. If I can help, I must. Across town, Hanley lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mantra was different now, quieter, uncertain. If I can change, I must. 2 lives, 2 choices, bound together by one afternoon at the market, now hurtling toward a national stage neither had expected. The invitation sat in the middle of the dining table like a weight. Zoe stared at it while her father and mother discussed logistics, flights, hotels, schedules. Her mother asked, Do you really think she's ready? Zoe bristled. I'm right here. Her father raised a calming hand. She's ready if she wants to be. This is her decision. Zoe fiddled with her compass, the smooth edges grounding her. I don't know if I'm ready, but I know I don't want to stay quiet. That answer sealed it. The following week was a blur of preparation. Teachers helped her balance homework with practice speeches. The principal arranged for Zoe to rehearse in the auditorium after school, the stage lights hot and unforgiving. Kayla sat in the front row, notebook open, playing the role of critic. Too stiff, she said after Zoe's first attempt. You sound like you're reading a textbook. Zoe groaned. Because I am. She waved the printed speech in frustration. Kayla marched up to the stage. Don't read. Talk. Say what you told me. The truth. That's what people need to hear. Zoe took a deep breath and tried again. This time she set the paper aside. I was scared. I thought if I did everything right, nothing bad could happen. But I learned that sometimes the rules don't protect you. Sometimes the only thing you have is your voice. Kayla clapped, beaming. That's it. That's the Zoe people need to hear. Meanwhile, Officer Hanley's world shrank. The disciplinary board requested more documents. Every report he'd filed in the past 2 years, every body cam clip. Colleagues who once joked with him now kept their distance. At home, he scrolled through news feeds filled with Zoe's face. In one clip, she stood on the school stage, her voice trembling but firm. You matter. Hanley turned off the screen, shame pressing hard on his chest. He'd convinced himself he was just unlucky, caught on camera at the wrong time. But watching Zoe, he realized he had been wrong long before the camera. Back at school, Zoe's English teacher pulled her aside. Zoe, when you go to Washington, remember, stories move people more than statistics. Share yours. Let them feel it. That night, Zoe sat at her desk, journal open. She wrote, My story is mine. I can't speak for everyone, but maybe I can light the way for someone else. She practiced in front of the mirror, whispering, I'm Zoe Carter. I'm 14. I play the cello. And one day, an officer sent a dog toward me because of my hoodie. That moment changed me. Her reflection stared back, nervous but resolute. Daniel Carter prepared differently. He pored over legal briefs, statements from the precinct, and notes from community leaders. He knew Zoe's speech would move hearts, but he had to be ready for policy debates, for the political machine waiting in Washington. Late one evening, he found Zoe asleep at her desk, her head resting on her open journal. He draped a blanket over her shoulders and whispered, You're stronger than you know, Zoe. 2 days before the trip, protesters gathered again outside the precinct. This time, counter-protesters outnumbered them, waving banners that read, Support the Blue and Stop the Smears. Inside, Hanley sat through another hearing. His lawyer whispered strategy, but his mind wandered. Every chant outside sounded hollow. The board member's eyes bored into him. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if he admitted fault, not for strategy, but because it was true. On the morning of their departure, Zoe's suitcase sat by the door, her cello strapped carefully in its case. Reporters hovered on the sidewalk, microphones ready. As she and her father stepped into the car, one shouted, Zoe, what will you say to Congress? She paused, glancing at her father. Then she turned, her voice steady. I'll tell the truth. The cameras clicked like fireworks. On the plane, Zoe pressed her forehead to the window, watching the city shrink below. Dad, what if I mess up? What if I freeze? Daniel squeezed her hand. Then you breathe and you start again. Remember, you're not there to be perfect. You're there to be real. Zoe nodded, gripping her compass. The plane climbed higher, carrying her toward a stage bigger than she'd ever imagined, and toward a test that would define not just her, but the movement her story had sparked. The Capitol dome gleamed white against a pale sky as Zoe's car pulled up to the security checkpoint. She pressed her face to the window, heart racing. The marble steps stretched wide, flanked by uniformed officers and bustling staffers. Reporters crowded the sidewalk, their cameras swiveling toward her like searchlights. Deep breaths, Zoe, her father murmured. It's just another stage. She clutched her compass in her pocket, whispering to herself, If I can help, I must. Inside, the hall smelled faintly of polished stone and coffee. Lawmakers hurried past, papers clutched in their arms, aides whispering in their ears. Zoe's sneakers squeaked softly on the floor. She felt small, out of place, like a single note lost in a vast symphony. A young aide led them into a preparation room. Bottled water, microphones, and stacks of testimony lined the table. You'll have 5 minutes, Zoe, the aide explained. Keep it simple. Speak from the heart. Lawmakers respond to sincerity. 5 minutes. Zoe's palms dampened. She had practiced for hours, but now the words tangled in her throat. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Officer Hanley sat across from the disciplinary board again. The fluorescent lights made the room feel colder than before. His lawyer shuffled papers, but the board chair's eyes were fixed on him. Officer Hanley, we've reviewed your past incidents. This isn't the first time you've been accused of overreaction. Combined with the Carter footage, the pattern is concerning. Hanley's lawyer jumped in. Those incidents were resolved internally. None involved disciplinary action. The chair tapped the file. Resolved, yes, but not forgotten. Hanley swallowed hard. For the first time, he wondered if his badge, his identity for 20 years, was slipping through his fingers. Back in Washington, Zoe peeked through the heavy curtains of the committee room. Rows of lawmakers filled the seats, cameras aimed at the witness table. She spotted civil rights leaders, school officials, and even celebrities in the gallery. Her knees wobbled. She turned to her father. "Dad, what if they don't listen? What if I mess this up?" Daniel knelt to meet her eyes. "Zoe, you don't have to change the world in 5 minutes. You just have to tell the truth. That's enough." She nodded, breathing slowly, clutching her compass until its ridges pressed into her skin. The chairperson called her name. "Zoe Carter, please come forward." Zoe walked to the witness table, her cello case beside her like a silent companion. She adjusted the microphone, her voice shaky at first. "My name is Zoe Carter. I'm 14 years old, I play the cello, and last week I was stopped by an officer who thought my hoodie made me suspicious." The room hushed. "I did everything I was supposed to. I said my name. I said my intentions. I kept my hands visible, but it didn't matter. The officer opened his cruiser door, and his dog was ready to come at me. I thought I was going to be bitten. I thought I was going to be hurt for something I didn't do." Gasps rippled across the room. Zoe's hands trembled, but she pressed on. "I'm not here to say all police are bad. I'm here to say kids shouldn't be treated like suspects because of how they look. I want to live in a country where following the rules keeps me safe, where my cello case doesn't make me a target, where no other kid has to stand frozen in fear while a dog growls at them." She paused, her voice catching. Then she steadied herself, glancing at her compass. "I'm just one girl, but if my story can help make things better, then I have to tell it." The room erupted in applause, though the chairperson quickly banged the gavel for order. Cameras flashed. Some lawmakers wiped their eyes. Zoe sat back, heart pounding, but for the first time, she felt the fear ease. She had spoken. She had been heard. At that exact moment, Hanley faced his own test. The board chair leaned forward. "Officer Hanley, this is your chance to explain yourself. Do you stand by your actions that day?" Hanley's lawyer nodded sharply, urging him to stick to the script, but Hanley's chest felt heavy. The image of Zoe's trembling hands haunted him. The truth clawed at his throat. Finally he spoke. "I was wrong." The lawyer jolted. "Officer?" Hanley raised a hand. "I profiled a kid because of her hoodie. I escalated when there was no threat. I let my instincts, bad instincts, guide me instead of my training. And I scared her. I can't defend that." The boardroom was silent, stunned. His lawyer stared in disbelief. The chair studied him carefully. "That admission may cost you your badge." Hanley nodded slowly. "Maybe it should." That evening, Zoe and her father walked out of the Capitol to a sea of reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones thrust forward. "Zoe, how did it feel to testify?" "Agent Carter, what's next for your family?" Daniel wrapped an arm around Zoe's shoulders. "We're going home," he said simply. Zoe smiled faintly, her compass warm in her palm. She had spoken her truth, and whether the lawmakers acted or not, the world had heard her. Far away, Hanley sat alone in his apartment, staring at the empty badge on his table. For the first time in years, he felt the crushing weight of honesty, but also the faintest spark of relief. The flight home from Washington was quieter than Zoe expected. She thought the plane would buzz with chatter about her testimony, but most passengers were buried in headphones or dozing against windows. That was fine with her. She needed the silence. Her father sat beside her, reading the newspaper on his tablet. Her face filled the front page. "Teen's testimony brings Congress to tears." He angled the screen away so Zoe wouldn't see, but she caught a glimpse anyway. "Dad," she whispered, "everyone keeps talking about me like I'm some kind of superhero, but I was just scared." Daniel looked at her over his glasses. "Being scared doesn't erase your courage, Zoe. It proves it." Zoe leaned against the window, watching clouds drift by, trying to believe him. When they landed, reporters were already waiting at baggage claim. Microphones and cameras swarmed the family. "Zoe, what did lawmakers say afterward?" "Agent Carter, will this testimony lead to legislation? Do you think this case proves systemic bias?" Daniel shielded Zoe with his arm, his voice firm. "No questions. Please respect my daughter's privacy." But the cameras didn't stop flashing. Zoe felt trapped in their glare, like an insect pinned under glass. The next day at school, her classmates treated her differently. Some beamed, waving or giving thumbs up. Others avoided her, whispering when she passed. At lunch, Kayla plopped down beside her. You were amazing, Zoe. Did you see the memes? People are calling you the compass girl. Zoe blinked. The what? Kayla pulled out her phone and showed her. Someone had taken a clip of Zoe gripping her compass during the testimony and added text, "When life gets messy, follow your true north." The meme had millions of shares. Zoe groaned, burying her face in her hands. I didn't want to be a meme. Too late, Kayla grinned. At least it's a good one, but not all the attention was positive. In the hallway, Zoe overheard a group of students sneering. She's just playing victim. Better dad coached her. FBI families always want attention. She's not special, just lucky the cameras were there. Zoe's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, but the words stuck. She walked past, shoulders stiff, blinking back hot tears. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Being brave in public is easier than being doubted in private." Across town, Hanley faced his own storm. His admission at the disciplinary hearing had leaked. Headlines blared, "Officer admits profiling teen." Some praised him for honesty. Others called him a traitor. His union lawyer dropped him, furious he had abandoned the strategy. Hanley sat alone in his kitchen, the silence pressing down. For the first time in 2 decades, his badge wasn't on his belt. It sat on the table, stripped of authority, just a piece of metal. He replayed his words at the hearing. Maybe it should cost me my badge. He hadn't realized until now how true that felt. Meanwhile, Zoe's testimony ignited waves across the country. Schools debated new rules for student safety. Lawmakers drafted early outlines of bills to restrict K-9 use on minors. Civil rights groups hailed her as a voice for a generation. The Carter's mailbox overflowed with letters, thank yous, prayers, and stories from kids who had faced similar fears. Zoe read some aloud with her dad at the kitchen table. Dear Zoe, I'm 12 and I was stopped once because of my backpack. I thought I was alone. Thank you for telling your story. Zoe folded the letter carefully. Dad, maybe I wasn't just speaking for me. Daniel smiled softly. That's the power of truth, Zoe. It ripples. But ripples also brought backlash. Online trolls posted Zoe's photo with cruel captions. Anonymous messages accused her of exaggerating. Some even threatened her father's job. Daniel tightened security around their home, checking locks twice each night. We'll weather this, he told her. They're loud, but they're not stronger than the truth. Still, Zoe felt the weight pressing heavier each day. One evening, after finishing her homework, she set her cello on her lap and began to play. The music was soft at first, then stronger, filling the living room with steady notes. Her father sat nearby, listening in silence. When she finished, Zoe whispered, Music feels like the only place where people can't twist my words. Daniel nodded. That's your safe space. Never lose it. Far away, Hanley stood outside the precinct at dusk, watching as protesters marched past with signs bearing Zoe's name. He felt the sting of shame, but also something new, a strange sense of clarity. For years, he'd thought his badge gave him identity. Now he wondered if losing it might finally let him find himself. That night, Zoe wrote in her journal again, The echo after you speak can be louder than the words. I have to remember, I can't control the echo, only my truth. She closed the journal, placed the compass on top, and whispered her mantra one more time. If I can help, I must. By Wednesday, the Carters' quiet neighborhood no longer felt like home. Vans lined the curb, satellite dishes angled toward their windows. Reporters loitered at the mailbox, and unfamiliar cars idled on the street, cameras pressed against their tinted glass. Zoe peeked through the curtains. A man in a windbreaker was crouched in their yard, snapping photos of the porch. She dropped the curtain and backed away. Dad, they won't leave us alone. Daniel Carter pressed his phone to his ear, his voice clipped. Yes, I need a patrol car on Maplewood Drive. This is harassment. He hung up and turned to Zoe, his jaw tight. We'll fix this, I promise. But promises felt thin against the constant flash of cameras. That night, the family gathered in the living room. Zoe's mother spoke first. We need to talk about safety. The FBI has offered to relocate us temporarily, at least until the noise dies down. Zoe's heart lurched. Relocate? Like leave school? Leave Kayla? Her father rubbed his temples. Just for a while, it's about protecting you. Zoe shook her head. I don't want to run. If I disappear, won't that make it seem like I'm hiding? Her father studied her, torn between fear and pride. Zoe, your safety comes first. But you're right. You shouldn't have to hide for telling the truth. At school the next day, things were worse. Police cars lined the block as protesters and counter-protesters shouted at each other outside the gates. Inside, teachers rushed students through the halls, trying to shield them from the chaos. Zoe slipped into her seat in history class, only to find a folded note on her desk. It read, "Stop pretending you're a hero. We know the truth." Her stomach twisted. She crumpled the note and stuffed it into her pocket, refusing to let anyone see her cry. When the bell rang, Kayla pulled her aside. "Zoe, you can't carry this alone. You need to tell someone." Zoe shook her head. "If I tell, they'll say I'm weak. I have to be strong." Kayla gripped her shoulders. Being strong doesn't mean being silent. Meanwhile, across town, Hanley sat in a cramped diner nursing a black coffee. Word of his admission at the hearing had spread, dividing the city. Some colleagues treated him like a pariah, others whispered grudging respect. The waitress poured him another cup. "Rough week?" she asked softly. Hanley sighed. "You could say that." She studied him, then said, "At least you told the truth." "Most don't." Her words hit harder than he expected. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of relief. That evening, the Carters' front door rattled with a heavy knock. Daniel answered to find 2 FBI security agents. "Sir, we've been assigned to monitor your residence. Threats against your family are escalating online. Relocation is strongly advised." Zoe stood behind her father, fists clenched. "No, I'm not leaving." Daniel glanced back at her. "Zoe, no," she repeated, her voice trembling but firm. "If I run, what was the point of speaking out? I'm not going to live in fear." The agents exchanged a look. Then one said, "Understood, but at least let us post surveillance outside." Daniel nodded reluctantly. That night, Zoe sat on her bed with her journal open. She wrote, "Cameras outside, agents outside, but inside, I'm still me. I won't let them take that away." She traced the compass on her nightstand, whispering, "True north, stay steady." Across town, Hanley drove aimlessly through dark streets until he stopped in front of the market on Maple and 3rd, the place where it had all started. The chalk mural was still there, faded now by rain but still legible. Community. He parked and sat for a long time, staring at the word. Finally, he pulled out a notepad and began writing. Not excuses, not strategy, just the truth. "I was wrong. I profiled a child. I let fear guide me. I'm sorry." He didn't know who he'd give the letter to, but writing it was the first step that felt real. Back at the Carter house, Zoe practiced her cello, bow gliding across strings. The notes filled the room with calm, drowning out the hum of security radios outside. Her father watched from the doorway, pride and worry etched into his face. When she finished, he said softly, "You're braver than I'll ever be." Zoe shook her head. "I'm just trying to keep going." He smiled faintly. "That's bravery, Zoe. Step by step." Far away in a diner booth, Hanley folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Tomorrow, he would decide whether to keep hiding or face the girl he had wronged. And in her bedroom, Zoe closed her journal, whispering once more, "If I can help, I must." 2 lives, parallel and colliding, heading toward a reckoning neither could avoid. By Friday morning, Zoe sensed something was wrong the moment she stepped off the bus. Students crowded near the front lawn, but instead of laughing or chatting, they clustered in groups, holding hastily made signs. One read, "Stop the lies." Another, "Fame isn't truth." Zoe froze. The words weren't just about the case, they were about her. A reporter's van idled nearby, cameras already rolling. The protesters weren't just students. Adults stood among them too, waving printed flyers claiming the video was staged and that Zoe's father had used his FBI badge to frame the officer. Her stomach twisted. She turned to head back toward the bus, but Kayla grabbed her arm. "Zoe, don't! If you leave, they'll think they won." Zoe's chest tightened. "But what if I can't face them?" "Then let them face you," Kayla whispered. "They need to see the real you." Inside, the halls buzzed with tension. Teachers tried to keep order, but whispers followed Zoe everywhere. Some students smiled at her, whispering encouragement. Others glared, their faces tight. By second period, the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. "Students, please remain in class. Protests are occurring outside. Stay calm." Zoe sat rigid at her desk, gripping her compass in her pocket. Her math teacher gave her a sympathetic nod. When the bell rang, a group of students lingered in the hall, blocking her path. One boy sneered. Enjoy the attention, Carter? You made the whole town look bad. Zoe's voice trembled, but she forced the words out. I didn't ask for any of this. I just told the truth. The boy rolled his eyes. Truth? Or your dad's story? Kayla shoved her way between them. Back off. She doesn't owe you anything. The group dispersed, muttering, but the sting of their words lingered like a bruise. That evening, Zoe slumped on the couch at home, tears hot in her eyes. Dad, why do people hate me for telling the truth? Daniel set aside his paperwork, kneeling to meet her gaze. Because the truth makes people uncomfortable. Some would rather attack the messenger than face what's broken. But it's so loud, Zoe whispered. What if I'm not strong enough? He cupped her cheek gently. Strength isn't about never bending, Zoe. It's about standing up again when you've been bent, and you're already doing that. Across town, Hanley sat in his truck outside the precinct, the letter in his jacket pocket. He'd planned to deliver it to the disciplinary board, but his steps faltered. Instead, he drove to the market on Maple and 3rd again. The chalk mural was gone now, washed away by rain. Only faint streaks of color remained. He stood there for a long time, staring at the empty pavement before finally pulling out the letter. He read it again. I was wrong. I profiled a child. I let fear guide me. I'm sorry. His hands trembled. He thought about mailing it to the Carters. He thought about burning it. Instead, he folded it back into his pocket and whispered, tomorrow. The next morning, Zoe woke to find a package on the porch. Inside was a stack of letters from across the country. Kids her age writing about their own experiences. One said, I was stopped walking home because they thought my clarinet case was a gun. Thank you for speaking up. Another. I'm scared every time I wear my hoodie outside. You made me feel less alone. Zoe read them aloud to her father, her voice wavering. Dad, it's not just me. He squeezed her shoulder. Exactly. That's why your story matters. Later that afternoon, Zoe and Kayla walked to the park, cello case slung over Zoe's shoulder. Protesters still lingered at the school gates, but here the air felt lighter. Play something, Kayla urged. Zoe hesitated, then set up her cello under a tree. She played softly at first, then stronger, her bow gliding across the strings. Families nearby stopped to listen. A little boy clapped when she finished. For a brief moment, Zoe felt normal again, just a girl playing music in the park. Across town, Hanley finally made his choice. He walked into the precinct, letter in hand, and asked to see Lieutenant Garrison. The lieutenant raised an eyebrow. What's this? Hanley swallowed hard. The truth. Give it to the Carters. They deserve to hear it from me, even if I don't have the courage to face them yet. Garrison studied him for a long moment, then nodded. It won't erase what you did, but it's a start. Hanley nodded, his shoulders heavy. That's all I can do right now. That night, Zoe wrote in her journal again. Some people will always doubt me, but for every cruel word, there's a letter, a smile, a voice telling me to keep going. Maybe that's enough to hold on to. She closed the journal, placed the compass on top, and whispered her mantra. If I can help, I must. And somewhere across town, Hanley sat alone in his truck, staring at the empty badge on his dashboard, whispering a new mantra of his own. If I can change, I must. Sunday morning sunlight filtered through the blinds when Daniel Carter answered the knock at the door. Lieutenant Garrison stood on the porch, cap in hand, a sealed envelope tucked under his arm. Agent Carter, he said carefully, this is from Officer Hanley. He asked me to deliver it to your family. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What's in it? His words, Garrison replied. You don't have to read it, but I think you should. Daniel accepted the envelope reluctantly, thanking him with a curt nod. He carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table. Zoe, still in her pajamas, patted into the room and eyed it curiously. What's that? Daniel hesitated. A letter from Hanley, her breath caught. From him? Yes, we don't have to open it now or ever. It's your choice. Zoe stared at the envelope like it was a snake coiled on the table. Then, slowly, she reached out and slid it toward herself. She carried it upstairs to her room, shutting the door. Sitting at her desk, she traced the edges of the envelope with trembling fingers. Her compass sat nearby, the steady weight grounding her. Finally, she tore it open. Zoe, the letter began, written in uneven handwriting. I don't expect forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but you deserve the truth. I profiled you because of your hoodie. I escalated when there was no threat. I scared you. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Her chest tightened as she read. I've worn a badge for 20 years. I thought it made me strong, but it blinded me. When I saw the video, I realized the person I've become is not the officer I wanted to be. I don't know if I can fix that, but admitting it is the only start I can make. If you never respond, I'll understand. Just know that you mattered enough to make me face myself. Hanley. Zoe set the letter down, her eyes wet. She whispered aloud, I mattered enough. Downstairs, Daniel waited, pacing the kitchen. When Zoe emerged, clutching the letter, he stopped. Do you want to talk about it? He asked gently. She nodded. He said he was wrong. He said, I made him face himself. Daniel's brows knit. Words are easy. Actions matter more. I know, Zoe whispered, but it still means something to hear him say it. At school the next day, Zoe carried the letter folded in her backpack. She didn't tell anyone about it, not even Kayla, but the knowledge of it sat with her all day, like a heavy stone, but not entirely sharp. In English class, her teacher asked the students to write about change. Zoe stared at her blank page before finally scribbling, sometimes change starts with a crack, not enough to fix everything, just enough to let the truth in. She folded the paper and slipped it into her notebook, unsure if she'd ever share it. Meanwhile, Hanley sat in the precinct's back office waiting for news from the board. His lawyer had dropped him, his colleagues kept their distance, and his badge remained on the desk like a relic of a life slipping away. But for the first time in weeks, he felt lighter. The letter was out of his hands, delivered. Whether Zoe read it or burned it, he had told the truth. Maybe that's enough, he muttered to himself. That evening, Zoe sat with her cello across her lap, bow gliding across strings. The music was softer than usual, tentative, as if she were trying to process each note. Her father listened from the doorway. Different tonight, he said. Zoe looked up. I got his letter. I don't know what to do with it. Daniel crossed the room and sat beside her. You don't have to do anything. Forgiveness is yours to give, or not. No one can demand it. Zoe nodded slowly. I don't forgive him, not yet, but I believe he meant it. That's enough for now, Daniel said softly. Later that night, Zoe wrote in her journal, He said I mattered. Maybe I do. Not because of what happened, but because I kept standing. Maybe strength is letting the truth in, even when it hurts. She placed the compass on the page and whispered her mantra, If I can help, I must. Across town, Hanley sat in his apartment staring at his empty badge. He whispered his own, If I can change, I must. 2 mantras, 2 lives still bound together, now not just by anger and fear, but by the faintest thread of truth. On Tuesday morning, Zoe walked into school expecting an ordinary day. Instead, whispers followed her down every hallway. Phones glowed in students' hands. Kayla rushed up, eyes wide. Zoe, it's out! Zoe frowned. What's out? Kayla handed her a phone. On the screen was a grainy photo of the letter, Hanley's messy handwriting visible. The headline above it read, Officer's apology to teen leaked. Zoe's stomach dropped. How did they get it? Kayla bit her lip. Maybe from the precinct? Maybe someone thought the world needed to see it. Zoe's hands trembled. That letter was supposed to be hers. Private, fragile. Now strangers dissected every line, debating whether Hanley meant it or was saving face. She shoved the phone back into Kayla's hands, heart pounding. At home, Daniel Carter slammed his fist against the kitchen counter when he saw the news. That letter was hers. She deserved the choice of sharing it or not. Reporters camped on their lawn, microphones ready. Zoe, do you accept Hanley's apology? They shouted. Do you forgive him? Daniel barked back. No comment, respect her privacy. But the questions kept flying. Inside, Zoe sat at the table, staring at the folded letter she'd carried in her backpack. It no longer felt like hers. Dad, she whispered, do I have to answer them? He crouched beside her, voice steady. No, forgiveness isn't a press statement, it's your heart. No one gets to demand it. But the world wasn't patient. Talk shows debated her response. Some hosts praised Hanley's honesty. Others sneered that Zoe owed forgiveness if he apologized. Hashtags like #forgive or not trended for hours. Zoe scrolled through comments until Kayla snatched the phone away. Stop reading. They don't know you. They don't know what you went through. But they act like they do, Zoe said, voice breaking. Kayla grabbed her hand. Then you tell them who you are, not what they want you to be. Meanwhile, Hanley sat in his apartment, TV muted, phone buzzing with notifications. He hadn't expected the letter to leak. He certainly hadn't wanted it. When he saw Zoe's face on the screen, reporters chasing her for answers, shame burned through him. This wasn't supposed to hurt her more, he muttered. His lawyer called minutes later, furious. Do you realize what you've done? That letter is being used against you in the board hearing. You admitted profiling. You admitted fault! Hanley closed his eyes. Because it's the truth. Truth doesn't matter here, the lawyer snapped. Strategy does. Hanley hung up without another word. At school, Principal Ellis called Zoe into his office. You don't have to speak about the letter, he said kindly, but if you want to, we'll support you. Zoe stared at the carpet, torn. If I say nothing, they'll fill the silence for me. If I say something, they'll twist it anyway. Ellis leaned forward. Then speak for yourself, not for them. That's the only voice you control. That evening, Zoe sat at her desk with her journal open. She wrote, The letter was mine, now it's theirs, but the feelings are still mine. I don't forgive him, not yet, but I believe he meant what he wrote. That's enough for now. She closed the journal, pressed her compass on top, and whispered, Stay steady. Across town, Hanley entered the precinct for what could be his final hearing. The boardroom was tense, reporters waiting outside. His badge sat in an envelope on the table. Officer Hanley, the chair said, your letter confirms misconduct. Do you have any last statement before we decide? Hanley stood, voice shaking. I wrote that letter for Zoe Carter, not for the world. It wasn't strategy, it was truth. I was wrong, and admitting it doesn't erase the harm I caused, but it's the only way I can start to change. The room was silent. The chair finally said, We'll deliberate. You'll receive our decision soon. Hanley left the room feeling lighter, even as the weight of consequences pressed down. At home, Zoe played her cello late into the night. The notes were low and steady, filling the house with sound that wasn't debate, wasn't questions, wasn't noise. Her father leaned against the doorway, watching. You don't owe anyone an answer tonight, he said softly. Zoe lowered her bow, whispering, But one day I'll give one. On my own terms. Daniel smiled faintly. That's all that matters. Rain pattered against the windows of the Carter house Tuesday morning, the steady rhythm almost drowning out the murmurs from the TV. Zoe sat curled on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching reporters speculate about the disciplinary board's upcoming decision. Sources suggest Officer Hanley could lose his badge permanently, one anchor announced. Others say the union will fight back. Zoe muted the screen. She didn't want to hear predictions. She wanted quiet. Her father came in carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. Here, he said, handing her one, something warm before school. Zoe cradled it, staring into the steam. Dad, if he loses his badge, does that mean it's over? Daniel sat beside her, sighing. It means accountability, not closure. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you build. Across town, Hanley sat in the precinct hallway, hands clasped tight. The envelope holding his badge weighed heavy in his lap. Other officers passed by, some with pity in their eyes, others with disdain. No one stopped to speak. Inside the hearing room, the board filed in. The chair cleared her throat. Officer Hanley, after review of your record, testimony, and the contents of your letter, we have reached a decision. Hanley's chest tightened. Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty, your badge and firearm are to be surrendered. You will not return to active service. The words struck like a hammer. Still, Hanley nodded slowly. Understood. One board member leaned forward. Your letter was honest. That honesty won't restore your position, but it may be the first step toward repairing harm. Hanley swallowed, his voice low. Thank you. He placed the badge on the table, the metal clinking softly. For the first time in 20 years, his chest felt both hollow and strangely lighter. At school, Zoe couldn't escape the letter's shadow. Students debated it in the cafeteria, in the hallways, even in gym. She should forgive him, it's the right thing. No way, he ruined her life. She's famous now, she should just move on. Zoe slammed her locker shut, tears stinging. She wanted to shout that forgiveness wasn't theirs to decide. In English class, the teacher gave an assignment. Write a speech as if the whole world could hear you. Zoe's pen hovered over the page. Slowly she wrote, The world doesn't get to tell me how to heal. Forgiveness isn't a performance. It's private. It's mine. She folded the paper and tucked it into her backpack, close to the real letter. That evening, Daniel returned from work with news. The board issued their ruling. Hanley's off the force. Zoe looked up from her cello, bow frozen mid-air. For good? Yes, he's done. Relief and uncertainty twisted in her chest. She had imagined this moment 100 times, thought she'd feel triumph. Instead, all she felt was quiet. I thought it would fix things, she whispered, but it doesn't bring the moment back. It doesn't erase the fear. Daniel knelt beside her. It never does. Justice isn't about erasing, it's about making sure it doesn't happen again. Zoe nodded slowly. Meanwhile, Hanley walked out of the precinct for the last time, the rain soaking his uniform. He carried no badge, no weapon, just a cardboard box of belongings. Reporters swarmed him, cameras flashing. Officer Hanley, do you regret your actions? Do you have a message for Zoe Carter? Hanley paused, water dripping from his cap. Yes, he said, his voice raw. I regret them. Then he pushed past the microphones and into the rain. That night, Zoe sat with her journal open. She wrote, he lost his badge. The world thinks that's the ending, but for me, it's just another step. I don't know if I'll forgive him. Maybe not now, maybe never, but I know this. My voice mattered. My truth mattered. She placed her compass on the page and whispered, stay steady. Her father appeared at the doorway. Zoe, you okay? She looked up, smiling faintly through the weight in her chest. I don't feel finished, but I feel stronger. He crossed the room and kissed the top of her head. That's what matters. Across town, Hanley sat in his truck, staring at the empty space where his badge used to hang. He unfolded a new notebook and began to write. Not excuses this time, not strategy, just reflections, regrets, lessons. He whispered into the dark, if I can change, I must. Saturday afternoon, Zoe and her family walked into the town's community center. Folding chairs filled the gymnasium, reporters lined the walls, and a banner overhead read, Community Dialogue, Justice, Safety, and Trust. Daniel had warned Zoe this wouldn't be easy. The forum was open to the public, supporters, critics, anyone with an opinion, and everyone had one. As they stepped onto the stage, a hush fell. Zoe sat beside her father and Principal Ellis, the lights hot against her face. Across the aisle, rows of people shifted restlessly. Some held Justice for Zoe signs. Others clutched blue flags and scowled. The moderator adjusted his mic. We're here to discuss what happened in our town, how we move forward, and how we ensure safety for all. His gaze swept the room. We'll begin with Zoe Carter. Zoe's heart thudded. She clutched her compass in her pocket and rose slowly. I didn't ask to be here, she said, her voice quiet but clear. I'm 14. I play the cello. I like drawing. I didn't want to be a headline. She paused, breath catching. But one afternoon, an officer looked at me and saw danger instead of a girl. He opened his car door and his dog was ready to come at me. I thought I was going to get hurt. That fear stays with me. The room was silent except for the faint hum of cameras. But I also know this. My life matters. My voice matters. And no kid should ever have to wonder if following the rules will keep them safe. Applause erupted from one side of the room, boos from the other. Zoe sat back down, hands trembling but steady on her compass. The moderator nodded. Thank you, Zoe. Now we'll open the floor. A woman stood first, clutching a notebook. Zoe, my son is your age. He wears hoodies too. Thank you for speaking up, for him, and for all of us. Applause followed. Then a man rose, face flushed. This has gone too far. That officer was doing his job. Dogs are tools, not weapons. You're turning one mistake into a crusade against good cops. The room erupted in shouts, some agreeing, others yelling back. The moderator banged his gavel for order. Zoe's chest tightened, but she stayed seated. She remembered her father's advice. You don't have to argue with everyone. Just stand in your truth. Across town, Hanley sat in his apartment watching the forum stream live. He saw Zoe clutching her compass, her voice steady despite the chaos. He saw the crowd split in two, supporters and critics, neither side listening to the other. His stomach twisted. He had caused this divide. His phone buzzed. It was Lieutenant Garrison. You should be here, Hanley. If you're serious about change, face them. Don't hide. Hanley stared at the screen. Could he? Would he? His hands trembled as he grabbed his coat. Back at the forum, the mic passed to more voices. A teacher urged reform in schools. A retired officer argued about respect for law enforcement. The tension in the room pulsed like electricity. Then the moderator raised his hand. "We have an unexpected speaker. Former Officer Hanley has asked to say a few words." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Zoe's breath caught. Hanley walked slowly down the aisle, the weight of 100 eyes pressing into him. He looked older, wearier, his uniform replaced by a plain jacket. He stepped onto the stage, the microphone trembling in his hand. "I know most of you don't want to hear from me," he began. "I don't blame you. I was wrong." The room buzzed, half in disbelief, half in fury. "I profiled a child because of a hoodie," he continued. "I escalated when there was no threat. I let fear guide me instead of training. I scared her. I can't undo that. But I can admit it." Shouts erupted, some demanding justice, others yelling "traitor." But some listened, leaning forward. Hanley's gaze shifted to Zoe. "Your voice matters, more than mine ever did. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask that my failure becomes a lesson so no other kid feels the fear you felt." The room fell into uneasy silence. Zoe's chest tightened. She didn't stand, didn't speak. She wasn't ready. But for the first time, she saw not just the officer who had scared her, but a man stripped of his shield, speaking raw truth. Afterward, chaos exploded. Reporters shouting questions, protesters chanting, supporters cheering. Daniel shielded Zoe as they left through the back exit. In the car, Zoe whispered, "Dad, he came. He said it." Daniel nodded slowly. Words don't erase harm, but sometimes they start the work. Zoe held her compass tight. She didn't know yet what forgiveness meant, but she knew this. She had been heard, and the man who once terrified her had finally admitted it. For now, that was enough. By dawn the next day, clips from the community forum had gone viral. Headlines screamed across every network. Teen survivor confronts town. Disgraced officer speaks out. A town divided. Zoe woke to her phone buzzing non-stop. Dozens of texts, hundreds of notifications. Some were supportive. "You were so brave." But others were venomous. "Stop milking it. Forgive or shut up. You ruined a good man's life." She shoved the phone under her pillow, heart racing. "Why do they all think they can tell me what to feel?" she muttered. Downstairs, Daniel Carter sat at the kitchen table, the newspaper open. Hanley's photo filled the front page, his face weary, headline bold. "Former officer, I was wrong." Daniel frowned. He spoke the truth last night, but the world will twist it anyway. Outside, the Carter house was once again swarmed. Reporters camped on the sidewalk, microphones poised. Protesters clashed with counter-protesters at the curb, shouting over each other. Zoe watched from her bedroom window, clutching her compass. "Dad, they're louder than ever." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Storms roar the loudest right before they pass. Hold steady." But inside, he worried. The storm wasn't passing. It was growing. Across town, Hanley faced his own reckoning. Overnight, his words from the forum had spread. Some praised him for courage. Others branded him a traitor. When he stepped outside his apartment, a neighbor spat at his feet. "You sold out your brothers." At the corner store, a stranger sneered, "Trying to be a hero now, huh?" Hanley kept his head down, but the words cut deep. Later, he found a note slipped under his door. "Watch your back. No one trusts a coward." He sat on his couch, letter in hand, chest heavy. He had lost his badge, his standing, and now even his safety. But deep down, he knew silence had cost more than honesty ever could. Back at school, Zoe braced herself. Whispers followed her down the hall. Some kids smiled and offered high fives, others scowled. In the cafeteria, a boy muttered loud enough for her to hear, "She's just making herself famous." Zoe's fists clenched, but she kept walking. She refused to give him the satisfaction. Kayla caught up with her. "Ignore them. They're jealous, or scared, or both." Zoe sighed. "I didn't want fame. I just wanted to be safe." "Then keep saying that," Kayla urged. "Don't let them rewrite your story." That evening, Principal Ellis called Daniel. "The media frenzy is hurting Zoe. We've had to double security. Maybe she should take a break from school for a while." Daniel glanced at his daughter practicing cello in the living room, her bow gliding across strings. Her music was calm, steady, a shield against the chaos. "I'll talk to her," he said quietly. After dinner, he sat beside Zoe. The principal suggested time off, just until things cool down. Zoe lowered her bow, eyes flashing. "If I leave, they'll think they chased me out. I don't want to hide, Dad. I want to live my life." Daniel studied her, torn between fear and pride. All right, but we'll add more security. And you promise to tell me if it gets too heavy. She nodded. Promise. Meanwhile, Hanley received a call from Lieutenant Garrison. You stirred up a hornet's nest, Garrison said flatly. I told the truth, Hanley replied. Truth has a cost. You've got people who hate you on both sides now. What are you going to do? Hanley hesitated. Keep telling it. Then you'd better be ready, Garrison warned. Hanley hung up, staring at his empty badge case on the table. He whispered, If I can change, I must. Later that night, Zoe opened her journal. She wrote, The world wants answers I don't have. Forgiveness, anger, peace, everyone wants to choose for me, but my voice is mine. I don't owe them more than my truth. She set her compass on the page and whispered her mantra, If I can help, I must. Across town, Hanley wrote in his new notebook, I was wrong. I will keep saying it even when it costs me. Two voices in the same city, carrying the weight of choices. One learning how to live in the spotlight, the other learning how to live without his badge. Neither storm had passed, but both were learning to stand in the rain. By Thursday, Zoe's face was everywhere. Billboards flashed her photo with bold words. Youth Town Hall, Voices for Change. The event would be broadcast live, not just to their town but across the state. When Daniel told her, Zoe's stomach dropped. On TV? Dad, that's too big. He squeezed her hand. It's big because your voice is needed. But remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. That night, Zoe sat at her desk, compass in one hand, journal in the other. She scribbled possible lines, then scratched them out. Speak from the heart, she reminded herself, but her heart was tired. The day of the event, the community center was transformed into a studio. Bright lights, cameras, and rows of seats filled the gymnasium. Zoe stood backstage, palms damp, bowing her cello absent-mindedly just to steady her hands. Kayla whispered encouragement. You've got this. Just pretend you're talking to me. Zoe forced a shaky smile. With 2 million people watching? Kayla grinned. Exactly. Meanwhile, across town, Hanley sat in a diner booth, nursing a cup of coffee. His old colleagues slid into the booth behind him, their voices sharp. You embarrassed the whole department. Calling yourself wrong on camera? Might as well hand the media a knife. You think that girl cares about your letter? You're just feeding the mob. Hanley stared into his coffee, fighting the urge to lash out. Instead, he said quietly, She mattered. I needed to say it. His colleagues scoffed and left, muttering, traitor, under their breath. Hanley stayed seated, chest tight, but a strange calm rising. For once, he didn't feel like running from the word. At the town hall, the moderator introduced Zoe. Tonight we hear from a young woman whose story has touched the nation. Please welcome Zoe Carter. Applause thundered. Zoe stepped into the lights, compass tucked in her pocket. She adjusted the microphone, her voice trembling at first. I didn't ask for this stage, she began. I didn't want fame. I wanted safety. I wanted to be a girl walking home with her cello. The room hushed. But I wasn't safe. An officer saw me and decided I was a threat. His dog was ready to attack me, and in that moment, I realized rules don't always protect kids like me. Gasps echoed. Cameras zoomed closer. Zoe steadied her breath. Since then, people have asked me if I forgive him. The truth is, forgiveness is complicated. It's not a headline. It's not something I owe anyone. Forgiveness is mine to decide in my own time. Some in the audience nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. But I know this, Zoe continued. Telling the truth matters. Standing up matters. And no one, child or adult, should be treated as less because of how they look. My story isn't just about me, it's about all of us deciding what kind of community we want to be. Applause erupted, stronger this time. Zoe exhaled, gripping her compass tightly. Back in the diner, Hanley watched the live broadcast on the small TV over the counter. He leaned forward, every word cutting and healing at once. When Zoe spoke about forgiveness, his throat tightened. He hadn't expected it, hadn't earned it, but hearing her claim forgiveness as hers alone, not for the world, struck deeper than any gavel. For the first time, he whispered aloud, I don't deserve it, but I hope she finds peace. After the event, Zoe stepped backstage, legs weak. Daniel hugged her tightly. You did it, Zoe. You stood tall. Kayla beamed. You were fire. Did you hear that applause? Zoe smiled faintly, though exhaustion pulled at her. I just told the truth. That night, social media exploded. Clips of Zoe's speech trended nationwide. Some hailed her courage, Others questioned her words. At home, Zoe opened her journal and wrote, "The world keeps shouting, but tonight, I remembered my own voice is louder, to me. That's what matters." She placed her compass on the page, whispering, "Stay steady." Across town, Hanley sat at his desk, writing in his notebook. His pen scratched steadily. She spoke truth again, and I will keep listening. Two voices, two paths, one finding strength in the spotlight, the other in humility. Both bound by a single moment that neither could erase, now carrying them toward an uncertain but undeniable change. The morning after the town hall, Zoe expected life to go back to normal, but as she walked into school, teachers smiled wider, classmates whispered louder, and reporters still loitered at the gates. Kayla nudged her shoulder. "You realize you're basically famous now, right?" Zoe groaned. "I don't want to be famous, I just want to play cello, hang out with you, and not have people shout questions at me." "Then keep being you," Kayla said. "That's the part people actually need." Still, Zoe felt the weight of all the voices, cheering, doubting, demanding, pressing against her chest. That afternoon, she sat in the music room after class, bow gliding across strings. The notes steadied her, soft but insistent. As the last chord faded, she whispered, "This is who I am. Not headlines, not hashtags, just me." The door creaked open. Principal Ellis stepped in, smiling warmly. "That was beautiful. Zoe, the school board wants to recognize you at next week's assembly. But I wanted to ask first, do you want that?" Zoe thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, not now. I've already said what I needed to say." Ellis nodded. "That's fair. Sometimes the strongest choice is knowing when to be quiet." Across town, Hanley walked into the community center for the first time since leaving the force. Kids played basketball in the gym. Volunteers sorted food in the kitchen. A supervisor approached him, arms crossed. "You sure you want to be here? People won't forget what happened." Hanley's voice was steady. "I know. I'm not here to erase it. I'm here to help however I can." The supervisor studied him for a long moment, then handed him a box of canned goods. "Start with this. Actions, not words." Hanley nodded and carried the box inside. For the first time in weeks, he felt his steps moving towards something, not away. That evening, Zoe and her father sat on the porch, the sky streaked pink with sunset. She turned the compass in her hands, its needle steady. "Dad?" she asked quietly. "What happens now?" I spoke. He lost his badge, but I still feel unfinished. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Because stories don't end neatly, Zoe. There's no final chapter where everything is fixed. What you did was shine a light. What happens next is up to all of us." Zoe nodded slowly. "So I keep living, keep playing, keep telling the truth when I can." Her father smiled. "Exactly. That's more than enough." The next day, Zoe received another letter in the mail. This one wasn't from Hanley. It was from a girl in another state. "Dear Zoe, I was stopped last year walking home from band practice. They thought my clarinet was a weapon. I was terrified. When I saw your story, I felt less alone. Thank you." Zoe folded the letter carefully, her chest warm. For the first time, she realized her story had become bigger than the pain. It had become connection. Meanwhile, Hanley stacked boxes at the community center, sweat soaking his shirt. Some volunteers avoided him, others glared, but a few offered nods of quiet acknowledgement. At lunch, one teenager approached. "You're the cop from the video, right?" Hanley braced himself. "Yeah, that was me." The boy studied him, then asked, "Why are you here?" Hanley swallowed. "Because I was wrong, and I don't want to run from it anymore." The boy nodded once, then handed him another box. "Then carry this." Hanley did. That night, Zoe opened her journal one last time for the day. She wrote, "The noise is still here, the anger, the questions, the pressure, but so are the letters, the music, the people who see me. Maybe healing isn't about silence or noise, it's about choosing which voices to hold on to." She placed her compass on the page, whispering her mantra, "If I can help, I must." Across town, Hanley wrote in his own notebook, "Today I carried boxes. Tomorrow I'll carry more." Change isn't grand gestures, it's steady steps. Two voices, two paths. One still learning to live in the spotlight, the other learning to live without a badge. Bound forever by a single moment on a street, now walking separately towards something better.